Computerized lighting displays by Lightorama. More people have created custom light shows with Lightorama than any other product. Easy to use, cost effective, and reliable. Imagine it, then do it. Hello everyone, my name is Craig Marshall and I'm here to show you some of the evolution of the Xmas flood and what it's become now. I know a lot of you are familiar with what you saw on Planet Christmas of the evolution of the flood from the prototype stage to what was supposed to be available to the public. Just wanted to put this presentation together to let people know where things were now, what things look like now, and that you should be very glad that you've waited. Hopefully this will help you understand what has been happening. It'll let you know a little bit of the process on the prototypes and how it was arrived at what we decided would be the ultimate and final product. Well, this is how it all started almost 2 years ago. I acquired these Rebel LEDs and I really wanted to see if they would be able to be transformed into a usable flood product for our market. I didn't really know exactly how to drive them. Came up with some designs for things, but decided to go with a standard controller project that was available on the web as a starting point just to get these things lit up and see how they worked. I was really surprised the first time I ever fired them up. As you can see here, this is only 3 LEDs and they basically wouldn't even allow the camera to photograph them properly. They're very bright. I was extremely surprised and walked around for a few days with some big spots in my eyes. But I was real happy that they were that bright. I was very, very surprised. Until this time, I didn't know a light-emitting diode could actually put out that much kind of light. Here's a shot of those 3 LEDs shining in the living room. They pretty much lit up the entire living room, which was I was amazed by. Even with the big screen TV on, they just kind of blared out everything. It was something that was something that had to be seen the first time when we fired these things up. It was just like, it was an OMG moment for sure. Here's what what all that work led to. The original prototype was going to be housed in a flood case that normally had a halogen bulb in it. This is what we thought was going to go out. They were a little larger than I wanted them to be. So we had to move on to the next generation. The next prototype decided to have a integrated heatsink that would hold the LEDs and also be the mount for the power supply and fit right in the case and help dissipate the heat. A lot of work involved in this heatsink in the manufacturing process, as you'll see from the next slide. I was making these myself. I have a CNC mill that I was producing these on. It was a lot of fun. I'm not really much of a machinist, but I learned quite a bit by doing this. The problem was, though, is that to manufacture a lot of these and get these things out the door and get them out at a cheap price just wasn't going to work this way. Also, the front seal on the standard Home Depot case was a foam type seal, totally inadequate for any type of sealing or environmental protection. Definitely needed some kind of other seal, so I cut these molds out of wood and poured in silicone rubber to create a kind of seal. Here's what the actual seal looks like after it came out of the mold. They had a little lip which fit directly right into the case, and then the glass set up against there, and actually very good seal. These things would work underwater and there would be no problems at all. Here's what the last known prototype of the Xmas flood looked like. You can see there in size relationship base to a quarter what they actually looked like. They had a glass in the front, the seal there you see in blue. the metal front heatsink, and then the case itself, which was a smaller flood, also available from the from a Home Depot, Lowe's type stores. Here's what the actual floods look like, and as you can see, there's two of them. What you see there is 6 LEDs, 3 from each flood. The amount of power generated by these things is enough to light up the whole side of a house, as you can see. The flood worked very well. Being able to take DMX was a really nice thing, but many people were asking, how could I make these things work with LOR without having to buy an IDMX? Some people wanted a few floods, but the price of an IDMX kind of made it hard for them to do both that and the floods. So we decided they had to go into some different territory here and decide what we had to do to make these things more producible. As you can see from all the other shots, that there was a lot of work making the prototypes. Probably nothing that could have been manufactured on a large scale or given the opportunity for the community to buy in large quantities. Price might have been a little high, so some redesign and some rethinking of packaging and all those things had to be done. So, in order to get this thing smaller, in order to get it into a smaller package and make it more versatile, you have to get rid of the heat that these LEDs generate. Basically, anything above 120 degrees C at the junction temperature of the LED would cause the LED to go into something called thermal runaway, which is not a good thing, and destroy itself. So, I mean, a design consideration is basically to get these junction temperatures down below 100 degrees, 120 degrees. Here's a simulation on a standard FR4 fiberglass reinforced copper clad board, and as you can see here, with the temperatures up of 900 degrees C at the junction, this LED is gone. It has melted off the board. It has turned itself into a little atomic bomb and is no longer in a functioning mode. Now here's that same LED mounted on that same FR4 copper clad, but attached to a very large, massive aluminum heatsink. As you can see, the heatsink is still staying fairly cold, but the junction temperatures at the LED are still 219 degrees C, which that LED is also a non-functioning lump of plastic now at this point. Just really hard to get those temperatures away from that junction fast enough so that the LED can function properly. So through a lot of thermal simulations and analysis, we basically came up with this design. We're using a composite material for the board. And as you can see, with this configuration and the heatsink configuration, you're able to keep the junction temperatures at 85 degrees C, which is well below the 120 degrees C, where they will destroy themselves. Also, if you can tell, the heatsink itself is down around 53 degrees, or somewhere between 120 and 130 degrees Fahrenheit, which is something you can hold in your hand. It'll be warm. It won't burn you. Won't set anything on fire. But definitely dissipates all the heat from the LEDs, all 9 running at full power. Now, a way to package this had to be thought of. Did some simulations on the computer, doing some 3D CAD, and came up with the mold design, which basically dictated the package design. This is one half of the mold as it was simulated. And here's the other half of the mold as it was simulated. Now the idea is, can we actually make these things and actually produce a part? Here's some test cuts of the CAM toolpath in a piece of MDF, just to make sure that we made some proper cuts and had the right choices on tools and toolpaths before we bit into some fairly expensive aluminum tool plate. Here's the two halves of the mold as they were cut from the tooling plate. They're not quite completely done there, but that is mostly done, the two sides. Basically, these two sides are put together along with the circuit board inside, and the urethane is poured in, and after it cures, the two mold halves are pulled apart, and the one-piece flood head is then released from the mold. Here's one side of the mold where I decided to put a silicone material in the mold to make sure that the LEDs didn't have any urethane deposited on them during the casting process. So in conclusion, as you can see, the evolution of the flood has gone way beyond anything that what you had seen before. The prototypes would have been expensive. They would have been in short supply. They would have been a problem. I had to go somewhere else to make sure that we could get these things out there to you guys. So a lot of people wanted them. A lot of people were asking about them. Had a hard time saying that I couldn't produce them. Had a hard time saying that I could produce them, but I knew that I had to get these things out for the people. There are a great source of floodlight for us and our hobby, and I just knew we had to get them out there. So that's when Lightorama stepped in, and they decided to provide all the expertise in the sport that I needed and a direction to take these floods so that they would be better for the public. So we'll to the next slide where we introduce the new LOR RGB flood head. Here it is. It's small in size, powerful and versatile as it says there. The size being just 2 inches by 4 inches by a little less than an inch. And it has a standard 1/4-20 tripod mount on the bottom. It makes it very useful. There's a great deal of clamps and such available for cameras for mounting cameras in various places. So all of those are adaptable to the flood head, which means you can mount this flood head pretty much everywhere, like on a fence post or on a tree limb or on the side gutter of your house or wherever you can have a place where you can clamp this with one of the multitude of tripod type clamps that are available. Here's another shot which shows the flood head. It's completely sealed in a urethane plastic. This is the plastic that's poured in the mold, and the board is actually encapsulated in the urethane along with the wires and the connections at the board. Then a optically clear UV resistant plastic is poured in to a depth of around 3/8 of an inch, which completely encapsulates the LEDs and makes them impervious to any kind of weather, which makes them really great for pond or fountain use. They will take at depth pressures, and there should be no problems at all. They're totally, completely sealed. Here's a shot of a flood head mounted on a tripod. It gives you a good shot of the front of the flood head, and as you can see from the glare in the lower corner of the flood head, gives you an idea of the actual clear urethane coating on the front and the configuration of the actual LEDs. The flood head is pretty much smaller than most cameras, so it really looks small sitting on that tripod, but that's really what we want. Something small that we can tuck away in a tree or tuck away in a gutter or tuck away anywhere we really want and produce massive amounts of light for our displays. Here's a back view of the flood head. It shows the pin fins and how thin the actual flood head is, and how small that it is as it's sitting on the tripod mount. So I guess maybe at this point a lot of people might be asking, why is it called a flood head? It used to be called just a flood. Well, we decided that basically we would like to have a separate controller, somewhat familiar or similar to what LOR customers are familiar with. Type of board, you put in a box, you plug your lights into that. Also very concerned that the flood heads got the proper type of drive to actually run the LEDs. And this was one way to make sure that they were also LOR capable and that also upgradable and part of the same way that the LOR cards that you're familiar with now operate. Here's a picture of the new prototype controller. The release version might look a little different than this, but basically this is what the controller will look like. It has 6 channels, enough to drive 2 individual flood heads. It has the normal jacks that you're used to seeing on a Lightorama card. Also, it will be upgradable in the same way as an LOR card and configurable via the configuration utility. It works in the same way as any other LOR card. You put on your 12 volts DC to power the card. You hook up the flood heads, and there you go. Hook up your Ethernet and your computer, and they'll take both LOR protocol and DMX protocol as well. Well, in conclusion, I just want to say thank you to everyone for waiting for these evolutions to happen. Um, I thought it was very important to get this information out to people so that were waiting for the Xmas flood, to let them know that the Xmas flood is now a product brought to you by Lightorama.